Hey y'all! In this video, I'm going to answer a couple of questions about what I think is one of the most underused options in the Vectric software, and that is Array Copy Toolpaths. Now, this is an option that was introduced back in version 9 of the software, but it's not talked about very much at all. And you'll find that option, the Array Copy Toolpath, over here in the Toolpaths tab in the center row. What that option does is it allows us to take any toolpaths we have created and create an array copy of that toolpath all over our material. I'll go ahead and I'll demonstrate what I mean by doing a simple project. The first thing that popped into my mind was the threaded inserts that a lot of folks want to drill holes for in a brand new spoilboard. So I've gone ahead and I've created a new single-sided job using a piece of material that is 24 inches wide in X, 24 inches high in Y, and with a thickness of 3/4 of an inch. My Z0 is set to the material surface, and unusually for me, this time I've put my XY datum position at the bottom left corner for layout purposes, just because it'll make the math out here a little easier. There's not going to be any 3D models, so we're not going to concern ourselves with these settings. We'll click OK. Now, most folks use the threaded inserts that are driven into the spoilboard from the back. And that insert requires a hole drilled through the material and a little recess pocketed around that center hole. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll start drawing that geometry. I'm going to create a circle with a 0.25 inch diameter, and I'm going to place the center point of that circle at my X2, Y2 location. I want it 2 inches in from the edge and 2 inches up from the bottom. I'll go ahead and I'll create that circle. Then I want to create the pocket for that threaded insert. And in this situation, in this case, the threaded inserts I have, they are 7/8 inch diameter. So I'm going to go ahead and change this, and I don't remember the decimal equivalent of 7/8 of an inch right off the top of my head, so I'll enter the fraction and tap the equals button, and it gives me the correct diameter, and I'll click create. So now I have my through hole and I have my pocket. One of the questions I got about the Array Copy Toolpath option is, how is it different, or how is it better than using Array Copy the vectors? Let's go ahead and let's demonstrate both. We're all pretty much, or should be pretty much, familiar with Array Copy the vectors. We'll select our vectors, we'll come down here to Array Copy, and we'll figure out how many holes we want in X and in Y. We'll enter that information here. We'll set whether we want to measure the gap between them or an offset distance between them. In this case, I'm going with an offset of 2 inches in X and 2 inches in Y, which will give me a grid with 2 inches on center between each one of these holes. And we have the choice of whether we want to group the copies or not. I'm not going to group them this time, and we'll go ahead and we'll click copy. The reason I did not group them is because I have two different toolpaths I'm going to have to run. I'm going to have to calculate these through holes to drill all the way through the material. But I only want these pockets to go about 1/8 of an inch into the material. And if I group them during this process, I'll just have to go back and ungroup them when it's time to calculate the toolpaths. So I'll go ahead and close this. And now what I can do is I can go through and select all of my small holes, group them, put them on a separate layer, then select all my large holes, group them, put them on a separate layer. Or I could just undo the whole thing with one hole created and one pocket created. I can come over to the Toolpath tab, select my inner circle, and I'm going to pocket that out. I want to go the thickness of the material, so I'll go with Z equals, so it'll drill all the way through the material. And I'll do an offset strategy, ramp in the plunge moves, and we'll name this through holes. And I'll calculate it. Now that's calculated one single toolpath. I'll close my preview, come back over to the 2D view, and I'll select this vector, do another pocket, but this time I only want it to go 1/8 of an inch deep. So I'll enter 1/8 of an inch using the same 1/4 inch end mill, again offset, and again ramping in the plunge. And I'll call this the pocket recess for the T-nut. And I'll calculate that toolpath. So I have a toolpath set up here for the through hole and for the pocket. Now is when the Array Copy Toolpaths comes in. I'll select those two toolpaths. Then I'll go into Array Copy Toolpath, and we see here the toolpaths listed are my through holes and my pocket recess. I want to use the same settings I would have used for the array copy for the vectors. And what I want to use is 11 holes, 11 rows in Y up this way, and 11 columns in X across this way. I don't want to go with 12 because that would put one right on this edge here. So I have to keep it back 2 inches, and it works out to be 11. I want to use an offset of 2 inches in X and 2 inches in Y, and I'll call this Array Toolpath 1. I'm going to keep that name. Now we have another option here, and that is to minimize tool changes. But if you'll notice, it's grayed out. That's because all of the toolpaths we have listed use the same tool. So there is no tool change. We'll go ahead and we'll calculate it. It's copied the toolpath to go ahead and create all of these holes and all of these pockets. And what it will do is, because of the order of operations I have here, it's going to drill the holes first, then come back and do the pockets. Well, if I want to change that, for instance, all I'll need to do is select the pocket recess within the array toolpath, move it up. Now it will do the pocket recess first, and then come back and drill the hole. Let's go ahead and we'll select the array toolpath, and we'll preview that toolpath. We can see that it creates the pocket, then comes back and drills that through hole. The question comes, Why is this better? What is the difference? Well, the difference is we don't have to do a lot of layout work and draw all of these circles. We just draw one. We also don't have to worry about going back and grouping a bunch of through holes and a bunch of pockets because we only drew one. So those are minor advantages, but it's an option that is available. The Array Copy Toolpath can come in very, very handy. If you need to edit a particular toolpath, for instance, if we decide that these pocket recesses just aren't quite deep enough, we get our T-nuts and we measure them and they need to go a little bit deeper, we can come back here and change our pocket depth to 0.14, calculate it, and now it automatically updated that array toolpath. So now I can reset my preview, come back, and just double check. And if I look at my readout display down here, put my cursor in that pocket, it is 0.14. So I'll select this toolpath now, my array copy, preview it. It goes through and does all of those through holes and pockets. And if I put my cursor down here, we see it has updated automatically. The Array Copy Toolpath is just an option. If you want to go ahead and draw out and array copy the vectors, be my guest. You're more than welcome. But the Array Copy Toolpath gives you a little bit more flexibility in that you can make the designs a little bit quicker. Now, it also works on more than just 2D vectors. It also works with 3D components. And to show that, I have another file here, single-sided job, again 24 wide in X, 24 high in Y, again 3/4 of an inch thick. My Z0 at the material surface, but for layout purposes, my XY datum in the center. Now there is a 3D model involved here, so we'll go up to very high resolution, and we'll click OK. I'm going to go into my clip art and get into my clip art models, and I'm going to use the barn star that I created in a earlier video, and I'll put a link to that video down in the description box of this video and up in a card up here somewhere right about now. I want to create a pattern of 4 stars. I want to cut them out of this piece of material, and I want to cut each star out separately. So I want to place a star down here, another one over here, another one up here, and another one up here. Now I could copy the stars into those 4 locations, but it would be easier to me to go ahead and just put one star down in this bottom corner, then array copy all of the toolpaths that I calculate for this star. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, check the size of this star to see how big it is. And it's currently, the width is 11 3/4 inches. And that'll fit fine down in this quarter of this piece of material. So I'll go ahead and leave that as is. But now I want to move it. So I want to accurately place this star. I want to put it on an absolute location of -6 in Y and -6 in X. I want the center of that to be in this quarter of my piece of material. So I'll put my X position at minus 6.0 and my Y position at minus 6.0. Click apply, and that's moved my star right down here into this bottom quarter of the material. I can go ahead and close that. Now I'm going to need a vector because I want a vector boundary to machine to. So with my star selected, I'll come up here in my modeling tab to create a vector boundary around the selected component, and there is my vector boundary. I need to offset this vector because I want the bit to come out past just a little bit. So with the vector selected, I'll come back into the drawing tab, and I want to offset that vector outwards by about 1/4 of an inch. I won't need the original, so I'll go ahead and delete the original. Click offset, and there is my vector boundary. Yes, it goes off the material here, but that's okay. It's not important. And I'll go ahead and close it. Now I can come over here, select my star, hold down Shift, select my vector boundary, and I can calculate a 3D roughing toolpath. Now that's automatically going to send us into material setup first. So we need to check that out. Thickness of my material is 3/4 of an inch, yes. My XY datum is the center, yes. Z-zeroing to the material surface, yes. Now down here, the position of my model, this is a very thick star. It's almost 3/4 of an inch itself. It's 0.73 inches thick. Now I want a nice, tall, proud star, so I'm going to go with that thickness. But it only leaves 20 thousandths of an inch of material left after this is carved out. So what I'll need to do is make sure of my material fastening technique. What I'm talking about is either double-sided tape, or my favorite, tape and CA glue, or a vacuum table, or something of that nature. Because there's a possibility these could break loose after machining and before we create a profile cutout. So think practically as you're designing these projects. Think about how you're going to fasten your material to your spoil board. Everything else looks okay. I'll go ahead and accept that, and we come into our 3D rough machining toolpath. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. I'm going to machine to the vector boundary, and I'm going to leave a machining allowance of 20 thousandths of an inch for my tapered ball nose bit to come in and clean up when it does the finishing toolpath. I'm going to use a Z-level roughing strategy. I'm not going to worry about ramping in my plunge moves, and we'll just call this 3D roughing. We'll calculate the toolpath. I'm going to go ahead and close that preview and go straight into a 3D finishing toolpath. For that, I'm going to use my 1/8 inch ball nose. I'm going to machine to the selected vector. I'm going to use a raster strategy. It's going to go back and forth, left to right. And we'll just call this 3D finish, and I'll calculate it. So I have my toolpaths calculated to carve this star. But now I want to go ahead and array copy. So I'll go into Array Copy Toolpath. I have both toolpaths selected, and I have 2 different bits this time. We need to set up our rows and columns. I want 2 rows in Y and 2 columns in X. So I'll go ahead and change both of those, and I'm going to offset them. I want the center of each of these stars to be 12 inches apart. So we'll just click the cursor here, and I'll add a 1. And I'll click the cursor there and add a 1. And I'm going to call this Array Copy Toolpath 1. We'll calculate it. And there are our stars. Again, I'm not carving these into the material to be left in this material. They are going to be cut out individually. So we can go ahead and preview this selected array toolpath. I'm going to stop the preview right there because I don't know if you noticed what it did. It did the 3D roughing toolpath, then immediately went to the finishing toolpath. That would mean I'd have 4 tool changes here in my project if I did that. Let's reset the preview. Let's go back into the Array Copy Toolpath, and now is when we want to look at minimize tool changes. I'm going to select that. Now what it's going to do is it's going to go through this list. There's only 2 tools, but it will do all of the operations it needs to do with the 1/4 inch bit. Stop, come back to the home position, let me do my tool change. Then when I start it again, it will run everything it needs to run with the 1/8 inch ball nose. So now, with that checked, let's recalculate that toolpath. Now let's preview it. Now it completes the 3D roughing on this star, then moves over and does the 3D roughing on this star. Once this is completed, it comes up and does the 3D roughing on this star. It then stops, lets me do the tool change, then comes back with the ball nose and does the remaining 4. So that's one of the ways the Array Copy Toolpath option can be used. Now, if you should change your mind or decide that there's an error that you need to fix, things have changed a little bit as versions introduced improvements. On the older versions of VCarve and Aspire, you would right-click the Array Copy Toolpath itself. You would right-click on that name, come down, and delete this. And that would send up a message asking you, did you want to keep the original toolpaths that make up this array copy? Well, that has changed. Now, if I come along and click delete this, it deletes everything. Now, I'm going to Control Z to undo this. In version 9, 9.5, and version 10, that's how you would delete just the array toolpath. It would then put up an error message asking you if you wanted to keep these 2. You would select keep. Since they introduced toolpath grouping in version 10.5, you no longer get rid of an array toolpath that way. Now you would select the array toolpath, right-click, and select Ungroup. That removes that array toolpath and allows you to go back in, make changes. For purposes of discussion, if you wanted to change the star and change to a different piece of clip art or a different component. To make any changes to the Array Copy Toolpath, that's what you would have to do. If you need to add another toolpath to that array, for example. Something I forgot to do was add my profile cutout. So now Looking at this, I deleted this vector. Oops, that was a mistake as well. Let me go back over here, select my star, go back into my modeling tab, draw the vector boundary around the star. There it is. Now I can come back over to my Toolpath tab, add a profile, and I'm going to use a 1/4" end mill this time because I want to get tighter into these radiuses here, tighter into these corners. And I still have the radius of my bit to concern myself with. So an 1/8" bit would be a lot tighter, and I'll still have some cleanup to do, but not too bad. For my cut depth, if we remember, my star was 0.73 thick. That means that this area out here where it's machined away is going to be 0.73. So that's where I want to start my profile cutout. So what I'll do is I'll type up here under start depth 0.73. And now I need to figure out how deep I want it to cut. I don't want it to cut another 3/4 inch from that 0.73. I only want it to cut the remaining material. So I can do the math in my head or let the calculator do it for me. So I have 0.75 minus 0.73 equals, there's my cut depth. So I have my start depth, my cut depth. I've got my bit selected. I want to machine to the outside of the vectors. For this demonstration, I'm not going to do a separate last pass. I'm also not going to add tabs. Again, think of how you're going to mount your material to your spoil board. And we'll call this profile cutout. We'll calculate the toolpath. Now, again, if we look down here in this space that's been machined away and you look at my readout down below here, you'll see that I'm at 0.73. That's why we're starting our cutout at that depth. So we'll preview that toolpath, and we see that it cut over here. I don't have an array copy. Not a problem. Undo last. Now I want to select them all. Close my preview. Now I'll go in and array copy those toolpaths. We have all 3 of my toolpaths up here in the list. I still want to go 2 rows wide in Y. I still want to go 2 columns high in X. I'm still going to use an offset of 12 inches and 12 inches. Because I have 3 different tools, I want to make sure to check minimize tool changes. I'm going to go ahead and leave the name Array Toolpath 1, and I'll calculate it. All 3 are now a part of this Array Toolpath, and we'll preview it. And as we just saw in the preview, it went through and did the roughing first on all 4 stars, then came back and did the finish second on all 4 stars, then came back and did the profile cutout on all 4 stars, and now I have my 4 separate stars, nice and thick. So this is another way that the Array Copy Toolpath benefits us, in that we only had to size and locate one 3D component, create a couple of vectors, one for the profile cutout and one for the machine limit operation. But we were able to come over and preview 4 stars from that single set of geometry by using the Array Copy Toolpath. So the jury's still out as to whether or not Array Copy Toolpath is any better than the standard Array Copy vectors, but it is an option that is available to you, and personally I think is underused when it comes to creating multiple copies of the same geometry or the same operation that you're going to be using over and over again. So, I hope you got something out of this video. And if you did, I do hope you'll give this video a thumbs up. Now, as usual, this afternoon at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll be hosting a live Q&A session where we can discuss the Array Copy Toolpath option, Array Copy Vector, or anything else I've demonstrated in this video. Again, that's today at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on my YouTube channel. And I've put a link to that live Q&A session down in the description box of this video. Now, these live Q&A sessions are a great reason to go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. And when you hit that red subscribe button, click that little bell icon right next to it. Then click it a second time and set that menu to all notifications. Then you'll get a notification the next time I post a video and the next time I go live. So I hope to see you this afternoon for the live Q&A session. And as always, whether you subscribe to my channel or not, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch, and y'all take care.